When people hear the words breast cancer, most of them immediately think about surgery, scans, medicine, and the difficult path of treatment. But even after treatment is over, one question often stays in the heart for a very long time. What should I do now to protect myself? What should I eat? What should I reduce? What can I do with my own daily habits to lower the risk of recurrence? This question is natural, honest, and deeply important. Breast cancer is not only about what happens in the hospital. It is also about what happens at the table, in the kitchen, during a walk, before sleep, and in the repeated choices of ordinary life. That is why today we will talk about breast cancer, eating habits, body weight, and daily rhythm in a calm and practical way that feels understandable and realistic for older adults, and for families who want to support them. The first thing to remember is that breast cancer is not a condition that exists far away from daily living. There can be many factors involved. Some people have a family history. Some have a genetic tendency. Some begin menstruation early or go through menopause later, which means a longer lifetime exposure to hormonal influence. Some may have gone through hormone-related treatments after menopause. Some may have used medications that contain hormone-related components. These are all parts of the bigger picture. But among these factors, many are not things a person can go back and change. The past cannot be rewritten. The body you were born with cannot be exchanged. The years that already passed cannot be rearranged. So the real question becomes very simple. What can still be changed now? The answer is lifestyle. Eating habits can change. Activity can change. Weight management can change. Sleep rhythm can change. Stress can be handled more gently. Daily routine can become steadier. This is where practical hope begins. Many people ask why body fat and body weight are discussed so often. When talking about breast health, they assume fat is only about appearance or the number on the scale. But body fat is not passive. It is part of the environment of the body. When body fat increases, the internal balance of the body can become less favorable. That is why after breast cancer, the goal is not simply to eat more in order to feel stronger. The goal is to nourish the body without creating an environment that adds unnecessary burden. This is where many people make a common mistake. They think that because the body has gone through something serious, they should constantly eat rich and heavy foods in the name of recovery. But more food does not always mean better support. Rich, greasy, and high-calorie foods can easily lead to weight gain, especially when daily movement becomes lower after treatment. So the diet after breast cancer should not become a diet of excess. Under the name of healing, it should become a diet of balance, steadiness, comfort, and sustainability. If we simplify the issue, one of the least helpful patterns is a repeated diet, centered on high-fat and high-calorie food. Fried dishes, heavily processed snacks, sweet desserts, late night eating, oversized restaurant meals, and rich convenience foods can all push the body toward imbalance. If movement becomes lower at the same time, the body stores the extra energy more easily. That is why the most important change is not obsessing over one single forbidden food. The more important step is changing the structure of the whole day of eating. A breakfast that is light but not empty. A lunch that is satisfying but not excessive. A dinner that is earlier and easier to digest. Meals that contain more vegetables, beans, tofu, whole grains, and simple proteins instead of foods that are loaded with grease, sugar, and excess calories. This kind of direction matters much, more than a dramatic rule that sounds strict but cannot be maintained. There are two questions that come up again and again. What about milk? Is soy allowed? These questions appear because breast cancer is often discussed, together with hormones, and many people become anxious about what that means in everyday food choices. Some drink milk proudly every morning as if it must be part of a recovery diet. Others become afraid of soy and avoid it completely. But fear is not the best guide. Practical understanding is much more useful. Let us start with milk. Milk is familiar, traditional, and widely seen as nutritious. But after breast cancer, it does not need to be treated as an essential food that must stay on the table no matter what. There are many other ways to obtain protein and nourishment. If milk makes your stomach feel uncomfortable, causes bloating, or simply does not suit your body, there is no reason to force it. Also, the issue is often not milk by itself, but the way milk-based foods enter the diet. Sweet lattes, sugary yogurts, ice cream, creamy breads, rich cheese desserts, and buttery pastries often bring in large amounts of sugar and fat. In these situations, the real burden comes from the total pattern, not from a single glass of milk in isolation. So instead of treating milk like a symbol of health, it is more realistic to ask whether it actually fits your body and whether it supports the kind of diet you want to keep long-term. Now let us talk about soy. Soy is one of the most confusing foods in conversations about breast cancer. Some people say it should be avoided because it contains plant compounds that are discussed together with estrogen. Others say it can be part of a beneficial diet. In this confusion, the most practical point is this: soy does not need to become a food of fear. Soy foods can be a useful source of plant protein and can help shift the diet away from an over-reliance on animal fat. Tofu, unsweetened soy milk, soy curd, fermented, soy foods, and other simple forms of soy can fit well into a balanced meal. But the form matters. Sweet commercial soy drinks filled with sugar and additives are very different from plain, unsweetened soy foods. The same is true for tofu, dishes that are drowned in salty sauces or cooked with too much oil. So the real question is not whether soy should be feared, but how soy is prepared and used. When it appears in a simple, lightly seasoned, balanced meal, it can be a very practical food choice. Protein is another area where people often become uncertain. They hear that heavy meat intake is not the best pattern, and then they wonder how they are supposed to maintain strength. The answer is not extreme restriction. The answer is better balance. Protein can come from beans, tofu, fish, eggs, and leaner sources that are easier on the body. What matters greatly is the cooking method. The same ingredient can feel completely different, depending on how it is prepared. Fried, greasy, salty, and heavily seasoned foods put more stress on the body. Steamed, boiled, grilled, or lightly cooked foods are usually easier to include in a stable long-term routine. Processed meats and fatty cuts should not become regular daily habits. Instead, the goal is to make meals gentler, cleaner, and more consistent. Some people then ask whether that means they should become completely vegetarian. Not necessarily. The healthier approach is not always total prohibition. It is increasing the proportion of plant-based foods in a clear and practical way. Imagine a plate. Half of it can be vegetables, mushrooms, sea vegetables, and other fiber-rich plant foods. The rest can be divided between whole grains and simple proteins, such as tofu, beans, fish, or eggs. This visual structure helps make eating less confusing. It replaces fear with order. It makes the meal feel calmer and easier to repeat. Vegetables are especially important not only because they are lower in calories, but because they help regulate the meal as a whole. They increase volume without excess heaviness. They encourage slower eating. They help reduce overeating. They bring a variety of colors and plant compounds into the day. Lightly cooked vegetables, simple side dishes, mushrooms, and greens are often very suitable for older adults because they can be easier to digest while still giving the body valuable support. But even vegetables lose some of their benefit when they become overly salty, sugary, or greasy. So once again, simplicity matters. What about rice and grains? Some people become so worried about cancer and weight gain that they try to remove rice completely. But this kind of all or nothing thinking is hard to keep and often increases cravings later. The issue is not whether rice exists. The issue is quantity, quality, and balance. Instead of a large portion of plain white rice with salty side dishes, a more helpful pattern can include brown rice, barley, oats, mixed grains, or other less refined options in moderate amounts. These foods can feel more satisfying and support a steadier meal pattern. The greater danger usually comes when the side dishes are so salty and stimulating that they drive a person to eat too much rice or to overeat in general. So after breast cancer, the better goal is not to treat rice like an enemy. The goal is to restore harmony between rice, vegetables, and protein. Oil also needs to be discussed carefully. Many people hear that certain oils are healthier and then assume that more must be better. But every oil is calorie-dense. Even a better oil can become unhelpful if used carelessly and excessively. That does not mean oil must disappear completely. It means animal fat, repeatedly heated oil, deep-fried foods, and oily sauces should be reduced. Plant oils can be used in smaller amounts to add flavor, not to dominate the meal. Cooking methods matter here as well. Steaming, boiling, blanching, and lightly dressing. Foods usually create a lighter pattern than frying and pan-searing everything. Another important point is that many people focus only on the number on the scale. They feel safe if the number has not changed much, or discouraged if it has gone up a little. But body weight is only part of the picture. The trend matters more than a single moment. Are clothes becoming tighter? Is the waistline slowly increasing? Is the body moving less than before? Is there more sleepiness after meals? Are sweet cravings becoming more frequent? Is there a habit of lying down soon after eating? These patterns often give earlier clues than a number alone. Weight management after breast cancer is not about creating a very thin body. It is about maintaining a body environment that is less burdened and more stable. That is why harsh fasting plans and fashionable crash diets are usually not wise. They may change weight briefly, but they do not build a life that protects the body in a lasting way. A better path is slower and more sustainable. Regular meals, fewer sweets, less mindless snacking, more walking, more consistency, more patience. Movement is essential in this conversation because food alone is not enough. After breast cancer, exercise does not need to mean a dramatic athletic routine. Walking at a steady pace, gentle strength training, stretching, taking the stairs when possible, standing up more often, and moving through daily tasks more actively can all be meaningful. Exercise matters not only because it burns energy, but because it supports circulation, helps maintain muscle, improves appetite, rhythm, eases emotional heaviness, and makes the body feel alive again. After treatment, many people feel unlike themselves. They may feel slower, weaker, or less motivated. That is understandable. But that is also why small movement matters so much. Even 10 minutes of walking each day can begin to change the direction of the body. Even a few gentle stretches can signal to the body that life is continuing forward. Food and movement work together. One supports the other. Another major issue is misinformation. People become vulnerable after a serious illness, and that makes them easy targets for exaggerated promises. A single food will not completely block recurrence. A single prohibited item will not single-handedly cause disaster. A dramatic superfood will not erase all risk. These ideas are emotionally powerful because they sound simple, but the body does not work that way. What matters is the repeated direction of everyday life. What is usually in the refrigerator? What kinds of foods are bought regularly? Whether late-night eating happens often? Whether sweets are used as emotional comfort? Whether enough water is being consumed? Whether sleep is steady? Whether meals are rushed or calm? These are the details that quietly shape the internal environment over time. That is why the diet after breast cancer should not be understood as a special temporary menu. It is more accurate to call it a reorganization of ordinary eating. When people try to improve their meals, the first obstacle is often not knowledge, but inconvenience. Cooking takes time. Shopping takes energy. Healthy intentions can collapse under daily fatigue. So the best meal pattern is not the most impressive one. It is the one that can actually be repeated. A realistic day might look like this. In the morning, unsweetened soy milk or a simple protein such as tofu or eggs with vegetables. At lunch, a moderate portion of mixed grains with vegetable side dishes and fish or tofu. In the evening, an earlier and lighter meal, focused on vegetables and simple protein. If a snack is needed, a very small amount of nuts or a piece of fruit close to mealtime may be more helpful than random processed sweets. Even when eating out, all effort does not need to collapse. Choose grilled or steamed dishes more often than fried ones. Reduce rich broth and oily sauces. Eat vegetables first. Stop before feeling overly full. Small decisions matter. Family members also need to understand something important. Encouraging a person to eat excessively. Rich foods, in the name of rebuilding strength, can become an unhelpful habit. Many families offer fatty soups, sugary drinks, expensive tonics, and heavy comfort foods because they want to show love. The intention is kind, but the body may need something gentler. The most supportive food is often not the most luxurious food. It is the food that digests comfortably, causes less irritation, avoids excess sugar and salt, and can be repeated every day without creating burden. Emotional support is important, but food should not become the only language of comfort. Another caution is becoming so afraid that the diet becomes extremely narrow. This is also a risk. If a person thinks only in terms of forbidden foods, the meal becomes joyless, stressful, and difficult to maintain. Then, sooner or later, frustration appears and the whole plan may collapse. So the core principles should remain simple. Reduce fatty foods. Increase plant-based foods. Choose simple proteins. Reduce sugary foods, overeating, and late meals. Move the body consistently. These few principles already organize the diet in a meaningful way. Personal discomforts can then be adjusted one by one. The management after breast cancer should not be driven by panic. It should be guided by direction. One lighter meal today, one extra walk today, one less sugary drink today, one earlier dinner today. These are not small in the long run. They become the pattern that shapes tomorrow. What matters most is not perfection but continuity. Doing something reasonable for a long time is far more powerful than doing something extreme for a few days and then giving up. The body changes through repetition. Harmful habits repeat their message. Helpful habits repeat theirs as well. So it is worth looking gently at the kitchen, the pantry, the meal timing, and the rhythm of each day. Breast cancer does not mean a life of fear forever. It means there is now a clearer reason to protect the body with wiser choices. Instead of obsessing over what cannot be controlled, it is often better to focus on what can still be improved. Choose vegetables more often. Use soy and tofu more practically. Eat simpler meals. Watch the trend of weight instead of reacting emotionally to one number. Walk a little more. Sleep with more regularity. Keep dinner lighter and earlier. Drink water more often. These are ordinary things, but ordinary things repeated become powerful. After breast cancer, the table is no longer just a place to eat. It becomes one of the most repeated opportunities to care for the body with intention. The path is not hidden in a miracle food. It is built into daily choices that are humble enough to repeat and wise enough to support the body over time. That is why the most important message is this. The goal is not to constantly add more rich foods, more complicated products, more fear, or more rules. The goal is to reduce burden, restore balance, and return to a way of eating that the body can live with comfortably for a long time. That is the slower path, but it is also the more realistic path. And the realistic path is often the strongest one.